Hello and welcome to the show. You have joined Workflow as a competitive advantage webinar where we will focus on highlights from the 2016 European Software Survey, and that was conducted at the end of last year. If this is not your destination, please use the exit rows on either side of your computer screen. Unfortunately, our time zone converter, that would be me, malfunctioned, which has made it difficult for our European audience to attend. We apologize for your delayed viewing of the recording, which will be available later today, but hope you enjoy it at your convenience. So as always, we encourage your feedback and questions, and Pat will provide a number of ways for you to reach us in a short minute. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Over to you, Pat.
Hey, Ryan, thanks so much. We are here in InfoTrends land. We are happy to have you with us. My name is Pat McGrew. I'm the Director of Production Workflow. You heard Ryan, my partner in workflow readiness. Between Ryan and I, we've got, decades of experience working in workflow software and working in print environments. So we try to leverage that information and our backgrounds to help you learn what you need to know about what's really cool in workflow. Today's presentation revolves around the results of our European Software Investment Survey. And so we hope that it will be useful to you. And of course, as always, if you have any questions, on your screen are all of them, or not even all, there are many of the ways that you can reach us. You can ping us by email, you can give us a call, ping us on LinkedIn, ping us on Twitter. You can always call the main offices in Weymouth as well. They can always route you. And if you have questions that we're not covering, or if you think we're missing any of the things we should be covering, we always invite you to give us a call. My first duty is to explain to you that our name has changed. We have been known as InfoTrends for, about a decade and a half. And recently we became KeyPoint Intelligence, and that is due to the fact that we merged with a very well-known organization called Byers Laboratories. Byers Laboratories is known across the industry as the people who do the testing of a lot of the equipment that you see Vial multifunction printers. They have a whole array of hardware and software that they test on a regular basis, and they are known for the Byers Lab Awards. So if you are not familiar with Byers Laboratories, we invite you to jump onto the new KeyPoint Intelligence website, and there is a short video there that explains not only what Byers Lab does, but what we on the InfoTrends side of things do. And watch as we continue to roll out the brand. We're still mostly functioning as InfoTrends right now, but over time you'll see us adopt the KeyPoint Intelligence logo. We all just got our business cards. We're very excited. But our PowerPoint template, as you will see today, is still in the InfoTrends trade dress. So today what we want to do is talk about sort of at the highest level, the production workflow topics that we'll be talking about for the year. We're going to focus on our European software survey, but over the course of the year, you'll hear us come back to you with webinars on a variety of topics as we wind through our 2017 research agenda. We have a number of reports that we're working on. The next one that you should see coming out from us is one that covers the wide, wonderful world of online design tools. And Ryan has been leading that research for us. We've been working on trying to identify all of the different ways that people engage online with online design tools and where the value propositions are. I think you find that really fascinating reading. That'll be coming up shortly, and we've got a number of other topics that we'll be winding through. We're in forecast season. Actually, forecast season for us is year-long. For the first half of the year, we're going to be working on all those things that we know and love, and then we'll start wandering over into some of the new areas that we're very excited about around packaging and textile workflows. So watch for a number of different webinars and a number of different products coming out around forecasting in the production workflow space. And of course, we're always doing research. So today, as I said, we're talking about the European software investment outlook. You'll hear us come back to you in a not very long time to cover the new U.S. software investment outlook, which is in the field right now. We're working on a web-to-print research project in Europe, and we'll also, we're looking towards a packaging multi-client. We're not sure what the topic might be. If you have ideas, please let us know. We'll be delighted to take them from you. The other thing that you should know is, there we go, is that if, in terms of your relationship with us, if you're a subscriber, your portal into us probably looks a little bit different if you haven't been on board with us lately. It now is branded as KeyPoint Intelligence, Insight from InfoTrends. So you'll see all the familiar things that you like, but you will also notice that over time some of the trade dress might change. If you ever have trouble finding something, please just ping us and we'll be happy to guide you to the place where it goes. You will be able to find the abbreviated presentations, the complete presentations, and the written analysis for the European Investment Survey, as Ryan has very clearly highlighted in the slide that's up on the screen now. And again, if you have any problems finding any of our research, please just reach out to us, because sometimes we have trouble finding it too. We produce an awful lot of content, and we want to make sure that you are able to take advantage of it. So with that, what I'd like to do is hand it over to Ryan to take us through the initial talk track around what we found in our 2017 European Software Investment Survey. Ryan, over to you.
Thanks, Pat. So we're going to start off with the Fast Five, which is kind of our high-level takeaway here from the results. We'll expand upon these, Pat and I will, and we'll kind of do a little bit of back and forth on these topics, but really encourage you to download that full presentation report from our site, because it will give you even more detail around these. So starting off at number one, we asked European print service providers about their revenue, so how they've been doing, particularly over the past 5 years. And as you see here, they average about 4.6% revenue increase over that time period. Now that's not the whole story though, because ending 2016, which is when the survey was done, they expected that to actually notch up to around 7.4%. So they were even more optimistic about how they would finish out last year. And this is, either one of those is a considerable more amount of growth on average than what we had seen back in 2014 when we had last done this study, where it was hovering under 2% actually past revenue growth. So, you know, what does that mean? We would kind of argue that the expansion into additional digital printing services, like wide format, for instance, has an impact on that. An increase in software spending, which further reduces cost, increases automation, would have an impact there. And then really seeing that as a competitive differentiator too, in terms of the automation and gaining efficiency, are just a few of the reasons why printers have been able to increase their revenues.
And we've seen in Europe, Ryan, we've seen in Europe that's really where we've seen some of the most innovative online solutions hitting the market, and really opening doors for sort of standalone print operations that might not have had the largest sales force in the world. By adding web-to-print components and online ordering components, they've been able to increase their range of sales potential without increasing their sales force.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I always go back and think, too, about that kind of one outfit that was kind of an innovative broker model, too. So we've definitely seen a lot of interesting things happening in the online space in Europe. You're definitely right. So it seems to be a little bit more unique activity there than what we're even seeing in other markets like North America and so forth. In terms of the second takeaway here, it's really about what printers have identified as the fastest growing parts of their business, and it's really digital, digital, digital. And so almost 36% of the respondents this time now have on site a wide format color printer. And another somewhat kind of surprising, or at least I found a surprising result was we saw an uptick in 3D printing. And Pat will take us through some of the movement that we saw there in a few minutes from the application side in terms of 3D printing and some other applications that have had growth and some that have declined. So it's definitely, much more digital, much more digital equipment out there, which are unlocking new applications that they can produce.
And this is all happening even as the actual number of print sites across Europe is really not changing all that much. What's really happening is that the existing printers are looking for net new ways to extend their business footprint, and they're looking at places that, frankly, 5 years ago, they probably wouldn't have looked at. A commercial printer who was doing sort of 20-inch wide roll-fed stuff or sheet-fed stuff might not have looked at wide format a few years ago, but frankly, the ability to integrate wide format into a digital workflow is really not that tough as long as you've got a sales team ready to go out there and sell it for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. It definitely changes the perspective, right, in terms of what you're able to do because of the price point of the equipment, the ease of putting that stuff into the shop, for sure. Moving to the software itself, the average software spend moved up since 2014 as well, where back then it was hovering around just shy of 50,000 euros. And this time around, it increased on average to about 73.3 thousand euros. Now, there's still a noticeable difference on how software is acquired and where people are spending and how much they're spending. And it really has a lot of dependencies. It changes by the region. It changes by the type of print service provider we're talking about, whether you're, a general commercial printer, you're an implant, you're a publisher, you're a, this or that. And then probably the biggest noticeable difference that you see in total software spend is by the size of the company. So, micro kind of print establishments, 10 employees or less, that kind of thing, they tend to spend considerably less than when you get beyond that threshold to start going up in size. And this is where that Excel download, if you're a subscriber, can really provide some additional insight because the data is broken down by all these criteria for you to look at.
The other thing to note in that software market is that the number of solutions available to buy has really exploded. We were joking at one point that it feels like on every street corner, right next to every Starbucks, there is now, or a Costa Coffee in Europe, there's also a web-to-print developer. And not just web-to-print developers, also developers of smaller MIS software solutions, developers of unique job ticketing solutions, developers of new and vertically specific imposition solutions. So your choice of what to buy has really expanded quite a bit as well. It's not just that people are finally opening up their purses to buy the usual suspects. They're actually going out and buying unique solutions that are perfect for the business the way they want to run it.
Yeah, a lot more names outside of the normal ones that you would associate, and you really saw that too, Pat, when you walked the software pavilion section at Drupal last year too.
Oh wow, yes. And we just saw it at Hunkler Innovation Days as well, where a lot of net new people that are relatively new. They might have been around for a while, but they're just getting their feet under them, and they're gaining some market share. They're signing customers and driving some revenue. So that average software spend is on an upward trajectory, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and that's what the data's been playing out as we've done surveys on both sides of the market here. So the fourth kind of point to get to in our Fast Five here is it's all about automation, and that's really kind of came across in this particular research in two different ways. So a third of the total print volume, that's the work that's entering in the shops, are now entering online. So that's the way they're coming in to begin with. And then another third of the work, or in some of that's probably overlap, obviously, because it's easier to do things, to automate things when they first originate online. But another third of that work is being produced in a fully 100% automated way, so a zero-touch kind of way. And that's up. Both of those are up considerably from last time, about 2 and 3 times respectively. And it really just speaks to how the print shops have taken this attitude towards software. And I think, Pat, we've seen that, right? It's just an attitude shift almost, where they see this as a key differentiator that they can use and leverage. And it's instead of an afterthought to kind of a hardware purchase that had been in the past, it's really up in the forefront now.
And it's not just the big guys that are going to this heavily automated environment. You're talking to more mid-sized printers who have taken a look around and realized that with a little bit of investment, they can eliminate a lot of the bottlenecks and touch points of their workflows and bring work in and get it out the door more efficiently. It is sometimes not a huge investment to add a little bit of automation, and given the footprint of some of the hardware automation options that are available and the wider range of software automation tools.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And last but not least, here on the 5, we can't ignore, and printers certainly can't ignore, what still remains as a challenge for them in terms of the workflow and software. So top of the list this time around was a customer onboarding. And quite frankly, customer onboarding isn't an easy feat to begin with, because it requires marketing to basically let your existing customers or prospects know that you are now offering a new tool or solution. Then you have to kind of do some sort of education, whether that's training, some kind of formal training initiative, webinars, what have you. And then there's just the ongoing support too for when they get in trouble and need help. But the thing here, though, is that in our world that's changing, and it's kind of what we talked about just a second ago, where more is being done online, and then you're even seeing more tools that are being offered to the customers where they can do things themselves without having to involve the print shop staff. It's really important. It's becoming more critical, and that's what we're kind of seeing bear out here, that you get those customers onboarded and actively using these solutions, because that's the way you're going to get the maximum benefit out of it. And like Pat said, and it's been a challenge, especially that's what we see printers struggle with in terms of things like web to print, where it is something that's very customer facing. And one of the other areas, go ahead.
So one other thing to remember is that this is not only a European problem. This is a global problem. No. In every single survey we do, one of the most heavily answered questions is the one around bottlenecks in getting customers on board. Struggle for small companies, mid-sized companies, and even the giants, the mega printers around the world, struggle with this idea of how to get a job on board reliably, accurately, efficiently, and ensuring that when you accept the job, it will actually go all the way through your workflow and out the door with the minimum number of touch points.
Yeah, and on the software vendor side, like some of the web print vendors, they've obviously seen this problem that their customers struggle with trying to get the end user onto their system, and they started offering obviously service to go engage that end user on their customer's behalf. So it's kind of an initial rollout and training kind of experience. But there's probably even more that can honestly be done on both sides of the equation, right? Whether it's online videos and resources and FAQs and so forth to kind of help all that out.
The thing to remember, though, is customers don't like to spend time on videos. So if you're a print vendor, if you're a print software vendor, if you think that you're just going to hand your PSP client a library of videos that they're going to get somehow magically their customers to view to figure out how to prepare their files the way you want them to prepared, that might be a little aspirational.
Yeah, I agree with that point. One of the other types of tools that also requires the onboarding process, and it can be a bit challenging, is what Pat said that we had taken a recent look at, which is the online design tools. And it's a growing area, though, so it's something to be aware of, because it's been around in the B2C space for a long time with photo books and personalized kind of materials and applications that way, but it's increasingly moving over to the B2B space. So if you think about it from like if you offer a marketing collateral kind of online environment where they can go to and customize or pull the most updated materials, it's nice that they would be able to do that from a digital aspect too. So that report will be coming out over the next, be able to design materials is what I'm going to say. That will be out over the next couple of weeks, so definitely take a look for it. So with that, we kind of elongated the Fast Five there, but Pat, take us behind the scenes a little bit on some of these points here.
Yeah, so if you take a look at the reasons for business growth, across the board, customers or the people who are responding to our surveys are telling us, well, we're better, we're growing faster because we're more efficient. And not only are we more efficient, but we've actually expanded the number of offerings, we've invested in sales, and we've invested in software to increase our automation. So the interesting thing is not that these are the top four that we've seen. The interesting thing is the percentage of the responses. Because what we are seeing is year on year, more people are telling us that they're making investments, and more people are telling us that they're expanding their service offerings. So that kind of relates back to what you saw in the Fast Five, where we said, you know, some of the fastest growing parts were, you know, yes, digital printing, but wide format and 3D. When a company takes a look around and says, I have saturated my market with doing the things that we have traditionally done, how do I grow my business for the next generation?
What else can I do?
They're looking beyond. Yeah, they're absolutely looking beyond. And so none of these are really surprising results, but they're important results because across the board, what we're telling printers that we're talking to is if you are not one of the people who can answer these four things positively, if you can't tell us that you're investing in more efficient equipment and expanding your offerings and investing in your sales and marketing and investing in your software, then it's very likely that you're probably not going to be leading in the market that you're serving going forward. So, oops, yep, there we go. So we also, when we're looking at Europe, we recognize that Europe is not a thing, that Europe is a consolidated group of countries, some of whom share a currency, some of whom do not. And frankly, not all countries behave in the same way. When you get down into Spain, there are certain kinds of printing that are really popular. There are a lot of people who are doing education and manufacturing type of printing. Some of the biggest book printers in the world are based out of Spain or began in Spain. So we see an awful lot of that kind of not only book production and printing production there, but we also see some of the interesting innovations in printing hardware coming out of Spain. When you look into France, you see a lot of manufacturing. When we talk about manufacturing, printing, we're talking about all of those things that a lot of people don't actually think about. Think about every tractor that's sold everywhere in the anywhere in the world, every lawnmower, every weed eater, everything that you use to manage your kitchen, your refrigerators, your stoves, your ice makers. Every one of those devices has documentation that comes with it. There are labels that are being produced to manage it. There's packaging associated with it. The manufacturing space is a huge printing space, and in France you see an awful lot of that printing going on. Utilities and financial, we don't see targeted as much, but a lot of that is because across Europe you've seen a lot of initiatives to bring a lot of the common, what I'd call personal business financial communication online, primarily sponsored by the posts across Europe. And so a lot of the things that we think of in other parts of the world as being a big moneymaker or a big print producer doesn't happen across Europe as much. Now, financial services continues to be big across all of Europe because, of course, there are big financial centers across Europe. and they it still produce an awful lot of paper to support the conversations that they have in their marketplace. And while proxy statements or trade confirmations or personal financial statements on a monthly basis might be coming to you electronically, there is still a tremendous amount of print support that goes on for pitch books, for the things that have the kind of office-based marketing that are used, the things that financial sales rep use to communicate with their clients and among the different financial services organization. I think that what you're going to find going forward is that while print is kind of almost under attack in certain financial markets and in certain corporate enterprise printing markets, across manufacturing and retail and education, we're going to continue to see it grow. So it should be a vibrant market to go after going forward. Now, Ryan promised that we would also take a look at the application outlooks going into going out 2016, 2018, and take a look at the gainers and see that top line, that top green line. 3D printing is a funny thing for us to take a look at in terms of the software investment outlook, and yet it keeps coming up, and it's something that people talk to us about quite a bit. We think that part of the reason for that is because most of the 3D printing solutions that are being promoted in the marketplace, you'll see them turn up at shows like Drupa, you'll see them turn up at the different print and packaging shows across Europe, and the post offices are actually looking hard at 3D printing as a way that they can continue to make money from their storefront outposts, which they're, in many countries, they're obligated to maintain. So they're looking for ways to treat 3D printing the same way they treat sort of quick copy printing, the kind of thing that you might go into a Call Quick or a FedEx office for. So not only can I take my pitch book in and get it reproduced for my sales reps, but I can go in with a CAD drawing and get a small part for my car door reproduced. It seems to be an interesting potential money-making opportunity, and print service providers are in a unique position to be able to offer that kind of service into the marketplace because they're already established in a market of providing stuff on a service type basis. So I think that this is something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. The cost of 3D printing devices, it's coming down. The cost of the materials that you use in the 3D printing devices is coming down, and it's broadening. The kinds of printing materials you can use from plastics to metals are changing quite a bit. So it's kind of the Wild West out there right now in 3D printing land, and I won't be surprised to see this number continue to grow, and I won't be surprised to see some of the larger service providers, print service providers across Europe starting to adopt and add 3D printing as one of the services that they offer even from their websites on a regular basis. Notice that what we are seeing, the one number that actually declined for us was or it didn't actually decline, but it didn't grow quite at the same trajectory, is transpromo printing. Notice that across the board, pretty much everything for us is growing, but transpromo is sort of flattening out a little bit. And as I mentioned before, a lot of the national posts across Europe, you folks are probably already familiar with this, they have initiatives to move a lot of that personal financial communication to online, to the post office sponsored online mailboxes. So I think that it's not surprising for us to see that number sort of flatten out a bit. Actually, I was surprised to see that it had actually grown a bit. But I think that some of that has to do with some of the utilities, the telcos, actually adopting a more marketing approach to their transaction communication. And we've seen some really fascinating success stories. If you look at what Communisys does in the UK, and if you look at what GI Solutions does in the UK, both of those companies have really embraced the idea of embedding marketing communication into transaction communication, and they've actually made that sale to their largest customers and convinced them to come on board, and those customers have seen enough success that they continue with the programs. So that's sort of an interesting change there. Notice that we saw newspapers grow. People keep declaring newspapers dead. Keep an eye on newspapers, because what's happening across Europe, and this is not happening in a lot of other places in the world, but the idea of newspapers has gotten almost sexy again. And so if you look at Italy especially, you'll see that there are more newspaper titles today in Italy than there were 10 years ago. And most of those newspapers are specialist newspapers. They might be newspapers that sit in restaurant lobbies across a given province, where the newspaper sort of talks all about cuisine and culinary things, and the advertising is basically all the local restaurants. But there are people out there making money with those newspapers right now, and many of those newspapers are moving to digital production and away from offset production, which allows them to do things they couldn't do before. Our packaging areas we know are growing, and frankly they're just going to keep getting bigger. Digital is going to become a bigger part of corrugated packaging, flexible packaging. It's becoming a larger part of label manufacturing, but remember that it's still tiny percentages of the market overall. So that's sort of our overall application outlook. If you're looking for places to place your bets going forward, definitely keep your eye on newspapers, definitely keep your eye on packaging, and definitely keep your eye on 3D printing, which is not to say that general commercial printing won't continue to grow, but these are really our big winners in the application space. So Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, when I first looked at this, I was like, for the audience here, because, the industry as a whole from the vendor community has been very focused on packaging solutions over the past few years. And these two kind of points here around flexible packaging corrugated is kind of a little bit of a validating point to say that the printer spotters are onto these applications as well and trying to produce them in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and watch folding carton too. Because we focused in on flexible packaging and corrugated, but the more we talk to people, we also understand that almost all of the digital hardware that's in the market today can handle lightweight folded carton substrates. The challenge is not the printing. The challenge is having your workflow set up so that you can do the finishing on it. And given that, as more providers start to move in that direction, I think folding carton is going to be more of a player in these spaces as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So going back around to the automation point in the Fast 5, the message is really loud and clear from printers in Europe, and that's what they continue to try and automate as much work as possible. Now, what you're looking at here, I intentionally left out some of the data points so we could just kind of focus on the high and the low. The red at the bottom, going from left to right, shows the amount of work that is completely manual once it enters a print shop. And over the past 3 studies that we've done, so 2012, 2014, 2016, what you'll see is that it's continuing to drop to where very little work now comes in and is completely manual. So some percentage of that work always hits some kind of automation step. And they expect that to even continue to drop almost in half again over the next 2 years. So this goes back to that, really looking at it as competitive differentiator and trying to get really efficient in the shop. Now, there's been big drops in terms of the amount of work that's being done completely manual, but on the high end, and that's in the blue, these are basically the shops that are very highly automated, and they have over 75% of their work that's coming in being produced in a fully automated zero-touch way. Now, there hasn't been obviously as much growth at this high end because, quite frankly, it's challenging to still build a fully automated workflow, and that's even more challenging when you offer a wide range of applications and services like most general commercial printers do, for instance. And for that reason, most have implemented some level of automation. They tried to do as much automation in between points as possible. So maybe they have their print management system automatically creating a job in their pre-press workflow that will then continue on the processes, as an example. But they haven't automated all the way out to the shop floor and so forth. And that's why most printers kind of fall into this big orange chunk in the middle here, and where some of it is automated, but not a high percentage of it.
So Ryan, when we start, so keep it here, so when we start to look at all this automation coming on board, I guess one of the challenges for any vendor is going to be making sure that not only does the software that you provide play in that automation story, but it's going to need to have smart UIs. It's going to need to have the ability to be programmed in a way that doesn't require a master's in MIT, from MIT in engineering, and that's one of the challenges when we talk to people about why, when they're buying automating software, what are they looking for? There's a talk track in the industry around low code versus no code. We were talking about this in the office a little bit, and this idea of no code workflow building has to do with like a Visio approach where you do drag and drop. And so as these tools come into the market, it's something that vendors are going to need to be sensitive to, that production managers want to be able to easily change the production workflows, even in an automated environment, without having to involve their IT staff.
Yeah, I mean, and it's got all kind of ramifications, right? Because as you get more, as the complexity builds and the customization part of it has built to do whatever you're trying to do, it's higher potential for failure points too, right? Because the code gets updated or the software gets updated and it breaks this or that. So I think the thing to call out there is that print service providers, what we're seeing is they want to be able to self-service more of that. And they frankly want to try and minimize the complexity, which also would reduce the cost that they would outlay for that automation to be brought in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now just a bit on kind of how and what the European print shops are buying in terms of software. So generally speaking, European market still tends to favor perpetual licenses that are basically purchased, software that you purchase up front, and it usually carries some kind of annual maintenance and contract versus paying for a subscription, which is software that you buy usually on a monthly or yearly basis. You're paying a subscription fee. Now, the difference is kind of more striking when you compare that against what we see in North America, because that market is much more evenly split, where it's kind of a toss-up between licensing, subscription, and saying, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to look at what type of software we're talking about, whether it's, a workflow, web to print, MIS, what have you, and I'm going to base my decision of whether to get a subscription or a license based on its function and what it's going to do for me. And Adobe, provides details around this kind of thing every year, and because they've been trying for years to transition their user base from basically license to Creative Cloud subscription. And they followed this trend line too, so they've had a much easier go of it in the U.S. market versus Europe and some other regions in terms of converting those subscriptions. Now, what does that mean? What we expect is that this reluctance will lessen over time, and there'll be a couple reasons that contribute to that. So number one, the pricing models will kind of stabilize, because if you think about it, vendors have had a long time to really settle on pricing models for licensed software. It's something that they've been doing for a long time. But moving to this subscription, which is often also involves kind of software as a service to the cloud, that's a kind of a new game that they're still walking through. And then secondly, there's just more vendors that are going to be transitioning to subscriptions, and in many cases when they do that, they'll take kind of an Adobe approach to some extent, where they may not be offering a perpetual license anymore, or they might even be making them less attractive, basically putting that licensed software into, our on-premise kind of software, into maintenance mode and not offering new feature updates, or they might do something like associate higher maintenance costs with that software. So for that reason, I think the vendor side almost is going to push that envelope a little bit further in terms of Europe adopting subscription software. Any thoughts there, Pat?
I think that over time, you're right. I think that it might take a generational change in management to accept the idea of subscription software. From a financial perspective, it makes a lot of sense to create a monthly regular expense against the software as opposed to paying, $1 million for a piece of software and then paying the 25% license fee or maintenance fee over time. There are some really sound financial reasons. I think that a lot of the disagreement or the lack of adoption comes just out of history. We always bought our software, we always owned our software, we're comfortable owning our software. It's inertia, and I think that as you start to look at the life cycle of software, which only gets faster every year, the turnover of version and upgrade releases, the idea of being on a subscription service and being able to take advantage of what that means, which is you get the latest software as soon as it's available, as soon as you're ready to add it to your system. From a business perspective and from a production workflows perspective, it would seem to be the smarter thing to do. I think the challenge will always be that that transition over the transom, right? Getting from the license-based model to the subscription model, it's still a hard sell, I think, to people who feel like they're giving up some levels of security, that they actually own this asset called the software, because it does actually change their balance sheet. Right? They no longer have an owned software asset. They are subscribing to a service asset, and so there are some changes in the way the business has to recognize that.
Sure too. Yep, absolutely. So we were talking about also not only how is it going to be distributed, but basically what already owned versus what print service providers in Europe are interested in basically taking on next. So on the left-hand side, what you see here is what the highest ownership rates across the different software segments that we look at. And these are, all these on the left are over 50% ownership, some of them reaching as high as 75%, like for digital workflow management, for instance. And what was kind of an interesting thing in terms of difference this time is that we saw an uptick in the number of respondents that said, I actually have self-developed or homegrown some part of this software mix that I have. And it kind of goes back to that, PSPs becoming masters of their own workflow domain, so to speak. And what I mean by that is that they're acting like software integrators themselves. So they're looking out to see if there's something that's best in class or something that will best fit the problem that they're trying to address, and they'll use that if possible. If not, the plan B is basically to see what it would take to develop that particular functionality out. And all in the hopes that they can link together the software so that they can seamlessly exchange job information and increase automation as they go through it. Now, some have gone so far as to even develop their own workflow solutions and try to start commercialize those for printers who are similar to them. So, one that comes to my mind is like OneFlow Systems out of the UK, but Pat, I believe you saw some other examples in your travels over there too, right?
Yeah, we actually, it's sort of one of the most common things you see anymore. I mean, even going back over the last 20 years, I run out of fingers and toes when I start to count the number of service bureaus that turned around and became software houses. It is actually a fairly common path. If you've got something that you think is so good, and you've got the right mindset. I mean, if you think about a product like GMC, GMC began as an internally produced product for a software, for a service bureau, a print service bureau, and they were so sure that they had something that was so easy to use that they deprecated the service bureau piece, and they, look at where GMC is today. They're not the only ones. There are all sorts of companies that are doing it, and I think that over time, the challenge for companies that are existing print houses that think that they have something worth commercializing is that it is a totally different business. And more software companies fail than are successful. I mean, it's the same problem in the print business, right? I mean, a lot of people start printing companies and after a few years discover that it really isn't as profitable as they thought it was going to be. Software can be very much the same thing, because when you create software, you create a legacy obligation. You're not just selling a piece of software and walking away. You now have, especially in this business where you're selling software to people who are running their businesses with it, you've got maintenance obligations, you've got support obligations, you've got training obligations. It's big to put software in the market. So I think that if somebody's looking for software solutions, it's natural to look for software that came out of an environment that looks like them. I think that that's a natural thing to do. When print buyers, when print producers are buying software, they really need to make sure that they're looking at software solutions that have the integrity behind them, that have that infrastructure behind them to be able to solve the problems that are going to come up. And we don't see a lot of that. We've seen a lot that aren't quite really ready for prime time, even though they've hung their shingle out.
Yeah, and it's the longevity of it, right? You want to know that they're going to be there in 5 years when you still have the software in place. Kind of
Think about software that you might have been like the talk of the town 10 years ago, and how many of those software providers are still there and in the marketplace. Now, to be honest, a lot of them have been bought, right, by bigger players and incorporated in, and some software houses start with that as an intended play. But it's still a challenging field to get into. Software does drag a huge obligation behind it.
On the opposite side of the equation, on the right, what you see is what print service providers told us that they're looking at to adopt in terms of software. And there's some normal culprits on here, obviously, web to print, cross-media marketing. Those solutions have been out in the market for a long time, but there's still interest around those. But I want to focus on the other three. So we've seen kind of a steady interest over the past 3 years, and this is in all the surveys that we do across our service that for digital publishing. So you know, I kind of misworded and spoke a little bit earlier, but you know, there's a couple of reasons that this is an interesting proposition to printers. Number one, a lot of them can leverage it through their, you know, marketing, asset management kind of offering that they have to their customers to basically offer up digital versions of those solutions across whatever kind of device that the end user wants to see that in, so tablet, computer, web, etc. And so it gives them another kind of service avenue to approach if they've already doing that kind of thing. And then the other kind of interest level is and reason they see this as a natural progression is that it doesn't, in many cases, greatly alter their existing workflows, and they don't have to necessarily hire specialized talent to implement the solution. In many cases, they could probably implement a digital publishing type solution without having to go hire new staff. Now, two of these other ones, data analytics and project portfolio management, they're a bit longer plays, and they'll take a little bit more time and expertise to implement, but they still have upside. So they could not only, you know, provide kind of operational improvements for the print shop, but also could be packaged in some cases for as a service to the clients. Now, Pat, I know that you spent some time recently looking at the project portfolio management space. Right. What were kind of your takeaways there?
So project portfolio is something that is a really common thing in some other areas. So if you go over into healthcare, you look at some of the financial services packages, project portfolio management has become a standard piece of those environments because it speaks to the problem of having a customer that does a lot of work with you. So imagine that you're, you know, say you're R. Donnelley or you're Quad or you're one of the other big players, and you do business with a brand that has maybe 150, maybe they have 1,500 or even 15,000 different products that they're printing with you over the course of a month or a quarter. At any given point in time, the content owner for that print product may have a question, and they're going to call in. And it may be very difficult, in fact it is very difficult in most of the workflows we've seen, to actually dig down and find that one specific job and find out where it is in the production workflow. Is it on press? Is it in finishing? Is it in shipping? Has it already left the building? Is it stuck in onboarding because there was a problem and we didn't know who to call? So the project portfolio management solutions that are in the market today, which are primarily, they come from companies like Oracle and Inatus. What they do is provide that almost a fourth generation language approach that sits on top of the customer management system and the reporting systems, so that CSR can very easily find information about a specific job for a specific customer pretty much in real time. And while some of the print MIS systems we've looked at and some of the other reporting systems we've looked at have features of that, this idea of actually building it into its own dashboard effectively actually has a lot of value in to large operations that are dealing with large customers who do a lot of work with them. So I think that over time we're going to actually see that sort of not only become a thing, but it sort of will become a more integrated part of some of the print MISs that are out there. When we talk to some of the print MIS providers, they'll point to things that they do that already allow a customer to group jobs together under a specific banner, so that they'll be easy to find, but they're still sort of in early stages on it. I think that we'll find that you know, in a couple of years from now, the idea of being able to manage at the portfolio level of a relationship will probably be much more common in the industry talk track.
Yeah, very good. So kind of wrapping it up here, almost, our last kind of point around the Fast Five was, I know we already spoke about the challenge and need for customer onboarding. What I'd like to also focus on is the second challenge that printers tell us that they're having about customizing the workflows to their needs. Now, the way vendors are packaging software up is changing, and we've kind of gone through several stages of graphic art software. So there was kind of like the days of modular solutions that you would probably get from a single vendor, where they tried to have solutions in every kind of segment almost to enable kind of an end-to-end workflow. There was also a stage where there was customization through scripting, maybe something like Visual Basic or JavaScript was used, and further integration through kind of XML and JDF was the focus. Now, none of that has gone away, and it still has value. But now what we're seeing is kind of a stage where vendors are offering more standardized automation, is kind of how I would put it, and further integration possibilities, and that's really through published APIs or application programming interfaces. And that really cuts down on the time, expertise, and money that's needed to customize these multiple solutions and kind of link them together into a continuous workflow. And these APIs, they kind of keep popping up from all corners of the industry if you've been paying attention, whether it's, you know, conventional workflows like Heidelberg Connect or digital workflows like HP's PrintOS, and even other solutions like InFocus, for instance. They announced their API
and the new Printergy
this
Cloud
past week, right? Yeah.
Printergy,
yeah.
You know, I mean, now everybody's got a cloud solution.
I mean, the age of the API is in full swing, I think we'd agree, right,
yeah.
Pat?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question.
And we really see that, I see that as a big benefit to print shops, because it's going to empower them to kind of do more of this on their own. They're already going down this path anyway of trying to be their own integrator and kind of domain of their workflow, right?
Yeah, if we're looking at making recommendations to print service providers, one of the things I tell them to look for is a company that's going to give you a framework that's going to allow you to plug additional solutions into it. And because as much as we love our vendor customers who sell comprehensive end-to-end workflows, and as much as those are the right thing for some environments, I think the broader market is so diverse that it's hard to find a single end-to-end workflow that's really going to do everything that you need it to do, especially if you want to expand your opportunities in other areas. So buying into a framework that allows you to plug in apps from a variety of vendors, maybe, REST API is a really common way for vendors to make their solutions plug and play into these frameworks. That's really what I would recommend anybody look for.
Yeah, I agree, completely agree. So with that, I know we're coming up on time, so Pat, why don't you walk us through some of the takeaways?
So the very first thing I want to say to everybody listening is that if you are one of our vendor partners, I want you to seriously consider helping us out. When we do these surveys, we go out into the market and we try to identify what the print service providers, what the buyers want to buy, but we also need to identify the solutions that are in the marketplace, and we need to sort of codify them into our forecast. So if you're one of those people we're calling to ask for install bases and costs of maintenance, please seriously consider helping us out. It helps us build a better story and tell a better story in the marketplace. And which brings us to our takeaways. If you are in this marketplace, creating a modular app-based workflow that allows your solutions to plug and play with other solutions that you are not interested in developing, that is, we think, one of the most important things that you can do going forward, because that does appear to be what buyers want to buy. Buyers they have to expand what they're doing. It is very difficult for any print service provider today to take a look at their business and say, there are no changes I need to make because I'm making more than enough money and everything is just fine. Well, there may be a few out there that are in that state, and it's wonderful that they are. The truth is that most print service providers today are actively looking beyond what they're doing to figure out what it is that's going to help them continue to remain relevant to the clients that they serve. Those people have different customer requirements, different training requirements, different cost basis issues, and different workflow needs. And so think seriously about the solutions that you're bringing to the market and how they're going to help these customers do what they need to do. Remember that print service providers tell us that, and this shouldn't be a surprise, that their goal is to be able to earn a higher margin on every job they do. And this idea of competing, being the lowest cost provider, they know that this is what killed many of their competitors off and many of their friends off in the business, that going after that same work and just trying to undercut the guy down the street, going forward, I mean, it was never a good idea, and going forward, it's the fastest path to death. So what they need to do is figure out how they can get into these areas where higher margins are available, and certainly packaging, certainly VDP and cross-media solutions are areas that they're looking, but they need your help because they are not market specialists. They are not business development specialists. And at the end of the day, they're going to need some help, and you have to decide how you're going to provide that help, whether you're going to do that as part of the bundle in of the sale of the product or whether you're going to offer it as an additional professional service. And remember, one of the things that came out of our surveys is that as much as vendors want to sell professional services, it does not appear that printers want to buy professional services even when they need them. So consider that when you're looking at your pricing options, and maybe try and come up with creative ways to offer the professional services, maybe by linking it to increases in sales. If you help them increase their sales by a certain percent, they pay you some extra amount of money. There are all sorts of creative ways to do it. And our last takeaway on the list is that vendors have to have that clear value proposition if you want to sell subscription software. Across Europe, perpetual licensing is still the preferred. I think that will change over time, but it's going to take a while, and you've got to have a compelling reason for someone to change. It's a hard story to come up with.
Yeah, I'd like to point on that one too, because some of the things that we've seen go to subscription in the cloud, it just seems like a repackaging of kind of what was there in a licensed and on-premise way. And if you look at it from the perspective of your customer, the printer, it's okay, well,
why bother?
What's the reason? Yeah, why bother? So really think of it from their shoes. You know, we know that going to the cloud, going to subscription, it has certain benefits across the board, but, you know, what's the new functionality that I get? What's the new thing that's going to help my business? Or that's the thing that sometimes is missing.
And remember, we're here to help you with that. One of the things that Ryan and I are very good at are we take a dispassionate look at the products and services that you have to offer and help you identify what that talk track might be in the market based on the research that we've done and based on the experience we have working with print service providers in the marketplace. That is definitely a service that Production Workflow Services provides. We'd be delighted to work with any of you. I'll stop doing the commercial now.
Yeah, I think we're at time, so I want to thank everybody for joining today. The recording will be available later today, and you'll get an email to notify you that. And we hope to see you on our next webinar.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks. Goodbye, everybody.